X and I had way too young. We're friendly co-parents. One big rule we share is if our daughter breaks something, she pays for it. Now, sis and I are the only grandkids. Aunt never married. Instead, she worked with GMA and GPA at their Seams Tri-store, and took it over when they retired. Sis's girlfriend proposed last year. GPA offered to make FSIL a custom suit, which she was over the moon about. GMA had me ask Sis what her dream dress was and record the convo. Sis, thinking it was just between us, told me in great detail what her dream dress was, though said it was way too expensive. So she would get something much cheaper. Well, a few months later GMA surprised Sis with her dream wedding dress. It FOT perfectly and everyone cried. Sadly, GMA recently passed away, which hit us all hard. Sis was devastated, but decided that the dress meant GMA would still be there with us at the wedding. The issue comes in with C. She's very large, much larger than Sis. 3 days ago, we decided to go visit Sis and see how she was doing. It was great, but then C asked if she could try on the dress. Sis politely said no. C made a face, but dropped it. Later, we decided to go grab dinner. Sis and I went to pick up our orders, but C decided to stay and play with Sis's dog. We got back, and the dress was destroyed. C had apparently tried to get it on, popping some seams, and got stuck. Instead of waiting for help, she cut her way out. The dress was hacked to bits. Sis was devastated and asked us to leave. I grounded C and called Aunt with some pictures, asking if it could be saved. She said there was no. She said she'd make a new one, but it wasn't the same. Then she dropped the bomb on me. GMA had hand-sewed most of the dress, used super expensive fabric, and put almost 500 hours in making that dress. Since it was the only family wedding we'd have. In total, the dress cost $12,000, give or take. C has about $15,000 saved from various jobs, as well as winning writing competitions. This was supposed to help her in college. I took her to the bank and set in motion transferring all the funds, since as her parent I still have control over it. $12,000 to Aunt to pay for the new dress. $3,000 to my sister's wedding, as an emotional distress tax. I explained exactly why this was happening to C, but she sobbed the entire time, asking what was she supposed to do for college and saying it wasn't her fault. I told her she could get a job if she didn't get a scholarship. And it was her fault for trying on the dress after she'd been told no, and for not waiting until we got back. A few popped seams could have been fixed. Hacking the dress to pieces couldn't. C told my ex, and while she agreed C was in the wrong after the full story, said I shouldn't have ruined her future for a free dress. I reminded her of our rule, and she still thinks I'm wrong. $3,000, that was to make up to my sister that C destroyed the last gift our dead grandma ever gave her. I consider that part of the price of destroying the dress, since even if Aunt remakes it, it's lost a great deal of its sentiment value. I pointed out how young we has her because I wanted to explain how a 31-year-old has a 16-year-old kid. I do not resent having her, she's the best thing I've ever done. I also brought up C's size because Sis has Crohn's disease and thus is very tiny. The dress was made her for size, and C is much larger than Sis. I love C as she is, but just holding the dress up, it was clear it wouldn't fit. The money was C's have fun at college money, not her college fund. My ex and I are paying for whatever scholarships don't. When she was asking what she would do for college, she was asking what did she do for fun and to buy things we didn't pay for. I got off the phone with my ex. I sent her the pictures, and she freaked. She apparently didn't believe me when I said it had been hacked apart, and believed it was just a few torn seams. She was pretty much on my side after. She told me that she spent the day badgering our daughter, asking her why she did what she did. And finally C cracked and said she was mad that grandma wasn't alive to make her a dress, and that it was unfair. My sister got a free beautiful dress as a reminder when my daughter got nothing. Despite the many things she was given after the funeral. She tried it on, took it off when the seams popped, and then in anger hacked it apart. If she couldn't have a dress from grandma, no one could. Her own words. Honestly, knowing she did it on purpose has just made things worse. The fact that she could be so So I am 22 years old. I don't have much knowledge about finances and stuff as I still live at home as I'm at university. I do however pay my parents about £300 a month rent, I pay my own phone plan, buy material stuff I want or need, pay out for other services like for music or whatever, and try to put as much as I can in savings whilst still keeping enough in my main account for day-to-day purchases. Currently, I am saving up for driving lessons and hope that if I pass decently, I can use some of my savings towards getting a car. I'm in my final year of uni, so I'll be done and able to work full-time when all this happens. I also decided to get a credit card so I can learn how to manage credit wisely and build some up. My credit score is good for someone of my age and circumstance, but obviously it's nothing great in comparison for other stuff. I should point out that at most I only plan on using this card with a total adding up to £100. I've stuck to that so far and only actually used it twice, with these purchases only adding up to £80, and I paid it off quickly. I do not plan on exceeding my limit anytime soon, as I've heard far too many horror stories of people just using their credit card too much cause it was handy and getting into debt. The only people I disclose this to was my dad, as my mom has the tendency to blab to my brother and sister-in-law, both 28. She happened to overhear us talking one day, and before I knew it, my brother and sister-in-law got wind and asked me if they could use it. They both admitted they had debt spurred on by excessive credit card use and thought that since I basically had nothing owed on mine, it was free money. I told them quite politely that I was really uncomfortable with that idea and that I would owe the money and I can't magic up that kind of money. Things went quiet until a few days later they both turned up at the house. They were nice to start with, but basically started demanding I let them use the card, and they tried to manipulate my mother into guilting me into doing it. I got really angry, and when my brother said I owe it to them because they used to babysit me up until a couple of years ago, I laughed in their faces and walked out. When I came home, I learned they tried to manipulate my dad and he kicked them both out. My mother then tried and he told her to go too, and she is currently staying with my brother and Sil. The only person on my side is my dad, who tells me they're all trying to take me for a ride and they're trying to manipulate me cause I'm young and they think I'm vulnerable. My brother, sister-in-law and mom on the other hand think it isn't a big deal letting someone else use my card. It's really messing with my head, and I just want everyone to stop being in an argument. My boyfriend and I have been together about a year, and when our city implemented lockdown for the virus, he decided to quarantine with me at my apartment, as I live alone and have a nicer apartment and he has several roommates. Mostly it has been going well, and thankfully we both still have jobs. Except in the first few weeks I started noticing that the bathroom floor was suddenly always wet around the toilet. The sink is across the room from the toilet, so it's unlikely to be from the sink. At first I thought it might be water, but soon realized that it was definitely pee. I asked boyfriend about it nicely, and he apologized and said sometimes he has bad aim. I asked him to try a little harder and he said sure. The floor continued to be frequently spattered with piss. And a few weeks later I confronted him about it again, because I think it's pretty gross to step in his pee several times a week. And it seems like an easy thing to fix. If he misses the toilet, I think the very least he could do is make sure to wipe it up with toilet paper or a Clorox wipe. The cleaning supplies even live in a cabinet directly over the toilet. He said sure, sorry, he would try to remember to do that. Another week has passed, and while maybe he's doing this sometimes, I've continued to step in splatters of his pee and wipe it off the floor and clean the floor several times a week. I thought about asking him to just pee into the bathtub or something instead, because I don't understand how you can pee on the floor by accident so often and not notice and not clean it up. Last night I got up to use the bathroom in the middle of the night and absolutely stepped in piss for the 12,312,301,298th time. I had it, and I didn't want to pick a fight or ask him again, since it seems clear he can't or won't change. So I got one of my dog's wee pads from when he was a puppy, he is well trained now, and cut it up a bit and taped it down to make a sort of skirt or mat around the floor near the toilet to at least absorb the piss. Boyfriend saw this morning and is furious with me, saying that I'm calling him a dog, comparing him to an animal, etc. Honestly, I was not thinking that at all. I just was trying to be resourceful and solve the problem for myself, since I don't like piss on my bathroom floor, and don't like stepping in it. I didn't feel like arguing about it anymore. And putting a material specifically meant to absorb pee around the area he keeps peeing on by accident seemed like a practical solution. I am a 33 years old female, and I have had fertility issues for the past couple of years with my husband. He's 35. We went through with consultations, and while we had very promising results for treatment, the cost did give us pause. It wasn't that we couldn't afford it, we just weren't at the point yet where we were willing to pay. I discussed it with my husband and we were both fine with the idea of adopting. My cousin Tiffany, woman 25 years old, is adopted and she supported our choice in looking into it. However, this was a couple of years back, and during that time Tiffany was reunited with her birth parents, and she's been acting pretty hurtful to my aunt and uncle since then. She keeps making posts about how happy she is to know where she comes from and is happy about being reunited with her real family. She even talked about having her birth father walk her down the aisle as a chance to make up for lost time. Obviously, my uncle was very hurt about this, but when he voiced it, Tiffany got defensive. She called my uncle selfish, how this was about her, and that he knew what he signed up for when raising someone else's kid. Before the pandemic, Tiffany moved closer to where her bio mother lived so they could make up for lost time. And Tiffany kept making post after post about all the fun she was having meeting relatives, and how she called / video chatted with each of her bio parents multiple times a week. Meanwhile, she barely texted back my uncle and aunt once a month. I could tell how heartbroken my aunt and uncle were, but tried to give Tiffany her space, and the few times they said anything she accused them of being selfish and unsupportive. I think the biggest thing that broke them was when Tiffany promised to come by for my aunt's birthday and was even given the money to travel to them, but then never showed up. She called literally the day before to say that her bio mom had an emergency so she wasn't going to make it, but didn't give back the money. I am completely disgusted by Tiffany's behavior, and while I haven't completely ruled out adoption entirely, I did want to give medical-assisted conception a try. My husband supported this, and we are now currently expecting. After we made our announcement, Tiffany messaged me asking why I would spend thousands on creating a child when I could help one who already existed. I tried to play it off, but Tiffany kept pressing and calling me a bad person when there are so many children who desperately need a home, and overpopulation. It got to the point where she was pissing me off, and I just came clean and said that her behavior towards the people who loved and raised her was the reason. Tiffany got really upset, but I didn't care. However, her parents are now starting to say that I was wrong.